there's this guy right now, Anthony Edwards in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's comparing him to Michael Jordan, and it's like they are just now having a lot of success. But he's like 22. He's been playing basketball his entire life. Like nothing happened overnight. Very rare. The only thing that happens overnight is winning the lottery. I'm convinced.
Like literally, that's it.
Yeah, no one just wakes up and is like, "Oh, I'm successful today." Right. It's like
you don't see all the early mornings, all the evenings in the gym, all the weight training, all the time and discipline to learn about nutrition, all of the things. That's right, and it's hard, and especially for kids. That's a hard one. It's as a parent of teenagers, it's putting in the struggle. I mean, and it's the off season where real great athletes tend to be made. Sometimes for people, because they hear museum, they hear furniture making, but I say just trust me. It's usually one of the favorite things people do. They always say, like, out of everything they did, that was it. So we're going to continue to work on that. We have some big fun ideas coming up here that I think we're going to see the word of Jefferson spreading even more, which we know it is. Every professional conference I go to and workshop and whatever, there's always an example of what's going on in Jefferson, which makes us really proud to know that from the outside, because sometimes we lose sight of what we're doing here, and especially folks that live here, we just eating this every day, take it for granted. But there are some things that we're doing here that other communities are certainly taking note of, and also coming to say, like, how'd you do that?
Your second podcast of the month.
Yeah, I guess. Well, that one aired this month. That's true. So I don't know what your turnaround time is on all the editing and everything, but yeah, second podcast of the month. I've always kind of thought it'd be fun to start one too. You get to find the right person to kind of co-host, and it'd be fun.
Correct.
So, yeah,
it's about that. It's about the banter. It's about feeding off of each other.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah.
So what's up?
We're getting into the hot and heavy season here, and Jefferson Matters side of things,
with the festival,
all the event stuff, Bragg and festival, and just busy foot traffic,
one after the other. What is the numbers on foot traffic? Do you know? Do you have any?
I don't. I know that TJ Gardens has a kind of a sign-in book in there, so that's something we kind of go off of, but not everybody signs in. They stop in to ask a question or grab something or use a bathroom, and we don't have them stop in, or we don't have them sign in or anything like that. So I don't know. That's a good question. It'd be something to try and articulate a little bit more, which is kind of one of our goals, is to grab more data in general. There's something called Esri, and you have all this community usage data, community visiting data, and honestly, a lot of it's based on you've got population trends and all that kind of stuff, but then you have a lot of that stuff that's available through phone usage. They have amazing amount of data gathered just on where phones go.
I was on a walk last night, just to Baumgars. My kids are into Hot Wheels right now.
Nice.
It's like let's go to Baumgars. Let's go find a new Hot Wheel car, and then on the way back, because I just live barely half mile from Baumgars, maybe a little more than that. We walked uptown, and Lincoln Way was popping. Like
awesome.
Bread O had a lot of activity. Peony had some activity. Twin Shop was like the spot, you know. So I could see it. I'd be like, this is why the 50s and the 60s and the downtown square was such a nostalgic thing, is because that's the hub. Your town hub was the square,
For sure.
Thinking about Westerns, it's like you had people who lived out in the boonies out there, the little house on the prairie style, but then it's like, gotta go to town, gotta hitch up the wagon and the horses, because that's just where all the stuff was. You put it in one place. It's just location. Yeah,
it's really been fun to dive into the history, and, being a Main Street community, we get to do that, and that's part of our mission is historic preservation. And so seeing what the downtown of Jefferson, Iowa used to look like, in between the huge variety of services and shops and things. And like you said, you couldn't drive to Ames or Des Moines. I mean, that was to go to Perry was a couple days, in your wagon, and if you're going to Des Moines, it's a week process to get there and back.
Nuts.
Yeah. So you had a much higher demand to have things in one place. So that was it was really wild to think of all the things you could get right here in Jefferson before you could order it online or jump in your car and have everything at your fingertips within an hour. And very different. And one of the places for anybody listening that's in ever comes to Jefferson. On the north side of the square, where will soon be More Time and Shine On Designs, the building currently to their west. On the floor, or on the pavement, as you walk in, you'll see some little purple squares on like tiles on the ground, and these are glass. And so this is a remnant of the history of this community, because a long time ago there used to be businesses down below, and some of the businesses you can see signs of that where the walls will kind of like push out a little bit, and you used to have to walk up to the main floor. There were stairs to go up because the floors were higher than they are now. And that allowed the basements to have taller ceilings because there was businesses down there. And so rather than go up and down between the main floor and the business next door, they essentially had an underground walkway the length of the block. And so these glass tiles would allow light into them. And over time, the sun it reacted with, I don't remember which chemical in the glass, but that altered it to be purple. It wasn't purple to start with. That might be the only shop in town where you still have that out front.
Crazy.
So yeah, Mark Devilbiss, who does so much of their renovation work downtown, he's really into the history of stuff and was telling me about that. And he's down in Perry. You can see some of that too. And yeah, so it's really cool. I mean, a lot of that's probably been filled in underneath there by now, or that underground walkway and stuff. But it's just kind of fun to know how the community was used. And you know, we are working hard to try to get storefronts filled. And they had a whole nother level of commerce than even like the main floor wasn't enough. You had to have the basements to have businesses in too. So it's going all the way back to even at the movie theater, there was a service garage underneath it. It's just incredible. Funny to think about that stuff. So
I was at the city council meeting this last week, right, to do my little part. And I was leaving and I noticed those historical photos on the wall on the first floor, and there's a photo from 1938, and I can see the building where my chiro office is, and in the back where it's currently the jiu-jitsu gym, there's a big awning and it says Grain Belt Beer.
That's great.
But I've heard so many things. People come in and tell me, oh, this building used to be famously it was the bar, the Last Straw Saloon.
Correct. Hole in the wall bar.
A hole in the wall bar, but it's been, I mean, in 1950 it was the Joy Cafe. So it was a coffee breakfast spot. But yeah, there's just decades and centuries
so cool
of history in that building. And
it's really neat.
I think of it much more as maybe I'm getting old. This is where my priorities are. But I think of it more as a privilege to be a part of that in the next phase of history. And I don't know when that started. I don't know when my priorities, me as an 18-year-old kid, 25-year-old kid, I don't think I cared.
I agree. But same.
Now, you seem into it, the historical preservation. And
well, that was one of my least, say, in high school. I mean, I couldn't have cared. I was just an ignorant punk teenager. Like, who cares what happened? Let's focus on the future, you know?
Right.
So I have these conversations with my kids, too. Like, well, there's a lot of lessons so we don't mess up the same way over and over again, you know? Anyway, so definitely have taken a lot more interest being an employee of Jefferson Matters, and the root of a Main Street community in this program of Main Street America is community economic development through historic preservation. And it's really on display nicely in downtown Jefferson. The city's been very progressive, and being a Main Street community, it's really on display to see all of the facade renovations that have happened and buildings that have frankly been saved. Because otherwise there's no doubt there'd be a few buildings that would have been toppled in the last 10 years easily. So,
mine would have.
Yeah.
Mine would have. And
we're one of, I think, 4 communities in the entire state to have all 4 sides of our historic downtown still intact. So that's pretty fun.
That's it.
It's kind of we kind of think of it as our living room. You know, we think about like how you're going to welcome people to your community and what their impression of your home is. So I'm really proud of, minimally the appearance of our downtown, continuing to add to the context of what fills it and making more of it livable on, second story living. So yeah, it's a slow work in progress as always, frustratingly slow always. But just keep chugging along.
And Main Street definitely has a downtown focus, but in the project will never be done. But let's say all the facades get redone in a utopian world, and every building that can house it has upper story and living, and it's all full. I mean, then what? You mean where does development? Because it's not like Main Street's the only thing that matters. It's a big deal.
Correct.
It helps people like to see the historical stuff. Some don't care. Yeah. Some are living in the future or in the present, but it does matter to a lot. Our history teacher, it probably matters a little bit, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And
I forgot about Josh loves history too.
Yeah,
that's great.
I can't wait to get Josh on a history tangent on something. But yeah, what's next? I mean,
yeah, well, I think it'll be an ever-going hunt for the right fit for businesses downtown. And it should be pointed out too that the Main Street district is a geographically designated area, but it's not just the square. It extends out a little bit beyond that. And, for those familiar with Jefferson, it includes the rec center and it includes the old middle school, which we hope to still be seeing living spaces, nice high-end apartments, for example. So I think that's a great question. And I just don't ever foresee that being to that, like, well, now what? I don't know. The hunt to continue to find businesses that want to stick around and be here, but providing those experiences. We have some really surprisingly great tourism entities here. I mean, the Bell Tower is obviously one, but we just need to continue to get the word out about that. But also, RVP 1875 and Robbie Peterson and what he has. And it's really fun. I wish everybody could just kind of sit in on tours, because I'll join tours, bus tours and things when they come, or a certain special group comes. Yeah.
I was shocked to even know that bus tours came here when I first was like, what are people doing in Jefferson? And it honestly took me a while to try to figure out why people were interested in our town
at
all.
Correct. And so the goal is, okay, so the thing is, I think nobody's coming to Jefferson to, you're not coming to get what you need at Target or Best Buy or something like that. No. There's some fun shopping to be done, but the main thing is it's the experiences they provide here and the general just low-key, welcoming, fun, maybe a little chunk of Norman Rockwell or Hallmark Channel things. That's where I think we lean into if we want to really see tourism success. And like I was saying, the experience of going to RVP 1875 and spending an hour and a half to hear Robbie's story about his business, but the history of the trade of building furniture and the tools and techniques of the late 1800s it's a hard sell sometimes for people, because they hear museum, they hear furniture making, but I say, just trust me, it's usually one of the favorite things people do. They always say, like, out of everything they did, that was it. So we're going to continue to work on that. We have some big fun ideas coming up here that I think we're going to see the word of Jefferson spreading even more, which we know it is. Every professional conference I go to and workshop and whatever, there's always an example of what's going on in Jefferson, which makes us really proud to know that from the outside, because sometimes we lose sight of what we're doing here, and especially folks that live here, we just eating this every day, take it for granted. But there are some things that we're doing here that other communities are certainly taking note of, and also coming to say, like, how'd you do that? So we're proud of that.
It's a big deal. Do you think of yourself as a headhunter in a way, like recruiting people or businesses? How much of your literal job description is that, or is that just
a little bit? And I think we want to get more creative on how that happens. And so some of what we do, we work with Greene County Development Corporation too, GCDC, and they do a lot of that too, some of those head hunting things of businesses and business recruitment and whatnot. But there's certainly an element of that here. Oftentimes it's people that are coming and exploring that idea, and then when we meet with them and really try to sell them on the community and sell them on that space they're looking at, or what it may be, or why they should set up shop here or expand to here. So that some of the financial incentives the city provides are really, really attractive. A lot of communities don't offer that, so we have that for going for us. Jefferson Matters has a few smaller grant things that can help businesses as well. But you can offer those financial things. It's great, but developers and business owners are looking for communities that people want to be in. So we think, we talk about soft skills with an employee, right? We think that a lot of the stuff our organization does would be sort of the soft skills for a community. Like, why do you want to live there? Why do you want to stay there? Why do you want to visit there? And that's going to translate into business for people as well. So it's kind of selling those other components of it beyond just the nuts and bolts of a business plan, which is not my strength. but I can certainly be a cheerleader for the community.
It's fun. It's a big deal. And you as a city councilman, too, are you like a pro in city law and code and what someone can and cannot do in the city or whatnot? Or like how much do you...
Let me think. No.
Because you have a county, you have an attorney that's on...
Correct. So you have a city attorney, but then you also have an employee of the city that's their job. They're code enforcement. So I'm more familiar than I would have been 8 years ago. But sometimes, I mean, you can ask folks at City Hall and they'll like, well, let's grab the book. Like there's just a lot to know. But it's complex, and there's a reason there's somebody that's largely in charge of just that stuff. Yeah.
So your job is just to be a citizen of Jefferson. You're unpaid. You come to the meetings, you listen, you ask questions, you dig in, and you try to make decisions that are good for the city as a whole.
Right. We've had some very complex processes come through here this last year, and it's been a good example of so you certainly want to listen to the citizens, right? But also you want to gather as much information as possible. You want to examine credibility of information and really just be as objective and pragmatic as possible. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And so that sometimes means, putting your own bias aside and acknowledging that, which I think is really important. It's not always easy to do, but acknowledging that and figuring out what makes the most sense overall for the community as a whole. And it just being a good critical thinker. And again, gathering as much information, examining the credibility of the information. And just because 30 people feel very strongly and are very loud about something doesn't necessarily mean that's right for the community overall. And so that can be hard sometimes because you're just not going to make everybody happy, which that's been one of the things that I've had to grow and be okay with. I certainly consider myself a people pleaser, but that just is not the reality if you want to be in public office.
And you can plead the fifth to any of this. I've got no.
Oh no, I'm here to talk, and I think that's fun to be able to talk to people about approaches on things. And again, I think that's how can you argue with wanting to be an information gatherer and be a pragmatic, objective decision maker? That's what I would hope for any politician or leader of any sort. It's not entirely just opinions of people that you can go on making decisions. And like that's, you've put yourself out there as you were running for office and kind of showing how you do things and who you are and how you approach things. And the fact that they voted you in, that means they kind of have a little faith in how you address things and approach things. And so kind of, relying on yourself in that case as well. So always willing to learn. I think open-minded, be willing to learn, admit that you don't know everything. And you learn that you don't know a lot when you get into a local government situation.
I have a quote on my wall at the office that says, if you're unwilling to learn, no one can help you. If you're determined to learn, no one can stop you.
It's a great one.
And that one keeps me ticking.
Really good.
Keeps me humming.
It is. And it's the idea of like the more that you learn, the more you realize you don't know.
Yes, indeed. And this is a hot topic for me is failure. I hate failure.
Me too.
Who doesn't?
I think I was just talking with somebody the other day, like talking biggest fears. I think failure is mine, which is really close to being scared of success also.
That's deep.
It is deep.
That's deep.
They're very closely related in my mind and heart. Because anyway, failure is hard.
Well, failure is hard, and it's taken a while for me to get past whatever mental block I have about, when you fail, it's almost like I devalue myself, which is not true. That's just something that's happening internally.
Right.
That doesn't mean the world or my loved ones devalued me. Yeah. It's just something I put on myself. And to get past that and just work through it and just be okay with failure and to know that it's a learning experience and that.
Yeah.
I was listening to a podcast with Tim Ferriss. Are you familiar with Tim Ferriss?
I've heard of Tim.
Chris Williamson. Mm-hmm. Chris Williamson's my guy right now. If I could ever sit down with that guy, oh man, he's just a deep thought provoker. Modern Wisdom is his podcast. Okay. Tim Ferriss said he will pick a project that might be more highly likely to fail if it provides a skill set that would benefit him in the future. So he doesn't pick projects on which he wants to engage in based on success or failure rate. He does on skills necessary to progress. And that just lit up my world.
Wow, that's great.
Because who thinks like that? And there's a situation where he may have the budget to bankroll a failed attempt, and I don't think it's all business. I think some of it's just experimentation stuff, or maybe it's a product line, but he's at a point where he has more freedom. He can handle a failure and be okay social economically and all that sort of stuff, which is not the average person, but it might be as simple as like asking someone to a podcast, or asking the girl out or the guy out, and it's like maybe you failed, but you have that experience that you can learn from.
That's great.
And it's really just great. That has to be the thing that you lead with in a way. But
it's really great, because I struggle with the opposite of that. Like, I think, how am I going to make this be at rock star level? And if I don't really understand how I can do that, I'm not sure I'm going to do it. So I've got better about that as I've gotten older, but man, I have thought myself into never starting things before, which is really unfortunate.
I can relate to that. I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which sometimes it's better. Another done is better than perfect.
Yeah. Lives
rent free in my head.
Yes.
Sometimes it gets to a point where you just
good decision today is better than a great one tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this matter is a good example of a yin and yang in my marriage. My wife is better at forcing decisions to be made, and I'm like, hold on, can we just think about that a little bit more? No, we're doing it this way, and we're moving on.
That's so good. That's so good. Opposites attract.
There's a lot. There's some definite obvious yin and yangs, and that is one of them. That is there's a little bit of frustration there, but it's for the better.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
As long as your brain is okay recognizing frustration and just living with it.
Right. Exactly. That's right. Yeah. And the perfectionist mentality is one that I have to just smack myself in the face over sometimes, and just to move past it. You got to start and build off of something versus try to just boom, immediate greatness.
It doesn't always work that way.
It rarely ever does.
Yeah. Social media or media in general will try to paint it that way, especially
you just don't see so much of the rest. That's right.
A lot of that's happening in the NBA, which I mildly follow the NBA. I follow football a lot more.
Sure.
Love me a little Minnesota Viking action.
Yep.
Kirk Cousins, I'm still slightly heartbroken that he's not there anymore, but that's a conversation for a different day. But there's this guy right now, Anthony Edwards, in the NBA. Mm-hmm. Everyone's comparing him to Michael Jordan, and it's like they are just now having a lot of success. Yeah. But he's 22. He's been playing basketball his entire life. Mm-hmm. Nothing happened overnight. Right. Very rare. The only thing that happens overnight is winning the lottery. I'm convinced.
Literally, that's it.
Yeah. No one just wakes up and is like, "Oh, I'm successful today." Right. It's like
you don't see all the early mornings, all the evenings in the gym, all the weight training, all the time and discipline to learn about nutrition, all of the things. That's right. And it's hard, and especially for kids. That's a hard one. Mm-hmm. It's as a parent of teenagers, it's putting in the struggle. I mean, and it's the off season where real great athletes tend to be made. So
yes, that's when the hard work is really done.
Correct.
When the game is won is never while the clock is on during a game. It was won many workouts ago.
Yep. Many 5 a.m.s ago.
Yeah. Tough. Which you get into a guy like Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes, Michael Jordan, and it's like they couldn't lose.
Yeah, that's right.
They just found ways to win.
Refused.
And in a league like that, it's tough because you might have a lot of really good athletes or people who are winners, but there can only be one, Right. There can only be one alpha per season, which, gosh, I'm thankful for, because in the real world, I mean, there can be more than one rock star winner.
Yeah.
Until you get into some elite edge. I don't know. Is there a national history teacher of the year type of a thing? How do you measure that?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
There could be some sort of accolade, but I'm unaware of it.
You can memorize every fact ever. Yeah. And quality of storytelling of history, right?
Yeah, there's too much to know.
Yeah, that's fun.
And it's always changing. Or it's not changing, forgive me. It's developing.
I was going to say Yeah. I mean, I have kids in school right now that history to them is 9/11 and George W. Bush's presidency. So to them, that is history.
I'm feeling old right this second.
What history book do you use right now? How modern does it go?
The textbooks the school currently has that I'm at, they touch on the election of Barack Obama in '08, but I mean that's getting pretty recent. I don't know that you can call that history quite yet.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Historical, but not history.
Right.
Per se.
Where do you define that? Yeah.
At what point does history start?
Well, and I think
That's a big question.
so. Everything everything previous is history.
Yesterday was history.
When do you start looking at it more objectively? Like, and I think that takes time. Because if you've lived through something, you've probably formed opinions on it, and those opinions are hard to shake.
That's just it, right? Your anytime there's an emotion connected to it, it's a lot harder to be objective, right?
Oh, certainly. For me, teaching the Vietnam War, for instance, I didn't live through it. I wasn't here for the anti-war movement and things like that. But if you ask someone older, they have very strong opinions about the 1960s and 70s.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I have a number of patients. That generation is one of the biggest population genres of America right now. Is several of them who are Vietnam veterans, and a couple, they said, well, I knew I was going to get drafted, so I just signed up in order to get a better job and maybe not just go straight to the front door of Vietnam as a Marine or whatnot. So I had one guy who got on a boat. He was just a Navy, a sailor, because he enlisted, and PTSD says just trouble sleeping every night because of what he experienced in Vietnam. And it's just, it's crazy.
It's rough.
It's rough.
What a different life. So I have two points of thoughts. Well, I was going to go back to thinking about the path of an athlete, and I was thinking about the Olympics, since we're talking, Bell Tower Festival this year, and we're leaning into the Olympic theme with the Summer Olympics, and I just think about the psychology of how hard they work to get there. How many years you want to associate with the workout plan, right? Whether it's 4 years or their whole life or whatever, leading up to this. And so whether it's a team sport or individual, and then it comes down to, on some of the sports, literally tenths or hundredths of a second that determines if they get a medal or if they're in first or not on the podium at all. And then they're done. That is just such a wild thing to put yourself through. And there's so much they're obviously gaining out of that besides their final results. But it is such an interesting experiment in the human psyche to me, is being an Olympic athlete, especially those speed given of sports, with running and cycling and swimming and those types of things. It's just, and some of this in the winter, the Olympics especially too, it's just really crazy to think, and people from around the world have all maximized their human body ability all within hundredths of a second of each other. It's just nuts. And as we continue to learn about, how the human body works in sports medicine, and records will always continue to fall. It always seems like that record's never going to fall. Here it goes. It's wild.
Yeah.
So that stuff is fascinating to me, and what amount of therapy all of those athletes must need after the Olympics or before.
Well, and certainly I think Olympic athletes, especially because it's not like they get a season every year at the Olympic level.
That's right.
And so you might have 2, maybe 3 goes of it.
Right.
And so
it's very
there's a lot of pressure on those a couple appearances that you are given, and then your career is over probably before you're 30. So what do you do now?
That's right. Like Lolo Jones, right? She went to high school here in Des Moines, and I can follow her on social media, and still a top elite athlete. And she just ran at Drake here recently and didn't even finish close to first. I mean, as far as time of modern athletes go and collegiate athletes and things, but still like a phenomenal athlete. I mean, it's just wild to think about what the level of athleticism and dedication. I've probably never worked that hard in my life cumulatively as those athletes have. As far as like physical athleticism goes,
wild to think about. It's different when you're paid to do it. You know,
Absolutely.
like I would love to be, yes, it is your career, but yet at the same time, some are cut out for it and some never would be.
The mental strength of it is, I mean, they're obviously strengthening their body, but the mental strength component of it is often not talked about, and it's a huge portion of it.
There's a huge talk about that in gymnastics right now, and especially with what Simone Biles went through the last time.
Yeah.
Michael Phelps has been talking about it, and it's like all of that was going on while we were watching them dominate.
Right.
It's just whether or not we're aware of it or whatnot. And golf right now, it's huge because Scotty Scheffler, number one golfer in the world, just got arrested yesterday for some wild reason that he probably, we'll figure it out in time when history fully unravels itself, whether or not something
or that was
crazy
valid
happened.
or not.
Yeah. But
did you see how he ended up shooting? I didn't see.
66, 6 under.
Not too bad. Jeez.
2 hours in prison in the morning for a mild traffic violation, and then a 66 later. So I think he's 2 shots off the lead. And so a reporter asked him about his mental fortitude and his ability to compartmentalize what had happened and what he was doing. And it's like golf. If there's any sport that defines your ability to be mentally tough, it's golf, because millimeters, your ball goes way off. One hole you combust, and you have to come back the next hole and the next hole and the next hole and do it again and again and again. And it's wild. You can't let it. It's wild how much your mind affects your physical ability. Yeah. And just something as simple, which is not simple apparently if you ask the pros, as a golf swing.
It's not simple at all.
And which this is a far segue. We can stay on the sports topic, but it's like in health, we almost want to disconnect sometimes the mind from physical ailments. And the older I get and the more I learn, you cannot do that. And it doesn't matter if your toe hurts or it's low back pain or it's a headache. It's looking at what you're going through emotionally and what your mind is, how you assess fear of failure or fear of success and what you're experiencing every day. That's your body's feeling that.
Totally.
It doesn't just live in your brain, that manifests in your body. And
the anxiety factor is powerful. Powerful for sure.
How it physically affects you, So the athletes, for them to have power over their mind is almost the superpower.
I mean, and if you're running, if you're lifting, you are convincing yourself that hurting your body is for the better. It is painful, and you're just like, nope, this is good.
This is good. This is safe. This is normal. I'm good here.
I know I'm gonna hurt for a day or two after this, but let's keep going.
And then it's one thing to do it in competition, but it's another thing to do it in practice, day in and day out.
That's right.
Where it's like, this doesn't even mean anything, and I'm just gonna hurt myself so I can perform better.
That's right.
It's impressive. It just makes it's exciting to watch the Olympics when you put all that into context.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Summer Olympics. Summer and winter are drastically different. Winter, you think of downhill skiing, and boy, when they're flying like 80 miles an hour
at least
downhill around curves, and it's like, if you fly, I mean, you could die.
Oh yeah, it has happened. You could definitely break some bones.
Like
slight mishap.
I love how different winter and summer Olympics are, because you get the track and field events, you get basketball, you get flag football. Apparently in 2028 now, you get all this sort of stuff. So
yeah, very fun. It's hard not to stay up random hours of the night when it's on other parts of the world.
Just be streaming it constantly. But it's also crazy what they're allowing in. The skateboarding
and continue to evolve what the sports are.
Yes. And I mean, if we go to Des Moines, is there going to be skate parks full of kids working on their Olympic dreams? Or like, how do you even get into, I'm going to do this extreme sport, this BMX biking at the Olympics? Right. Like, I didn't realize the whole world was on the BMX train here.
Right.
But
there you go. It's fun.
It's fun. It is fun. So what do you do for sports? I mean, is that a part of you that it's like you need to be engaged in some sport at some time?
I think there's different seasons of my life. Sometimes it's I've always liked basketball. I like playing basketball. I think that's fun. Golf has been a big part of my life since I was young. I grew up in a big golf family, very big. I mean, I was that like preppy country club kid growing up, and we'd spend a lot of time at the golf course. I was the oldest grandchild on both sides of the family. So my aunts and uncles were very influential in my life. My grandparents were very influential in my life. I've had all 4 grandparents up to last summer. So I'm 45. I was 44 and had all 4 grandparents. Very fortunate. And so the Wetrich side of things was very into golf, and we would go to professional tournaments, and like when Tiger won his heyday, you know, from me to you, Tiger,
really?
Like getting to watch Tiger, and yeah, so that's been a big part of my life, and going through college, I kind of started to gear in towards wanting to be essentially an ecological golf course architect. So I was really into nature. I grew up a nature nut. I was in scouts, and my grandparents would take me camping and fishing, and got into bird watching when I was a teenager, and so really fell in love with nature.
How does one get into bird watching as a teenager?
Great question. Yeah. Not to impress girls, although I do like to joke around about, you know, bird watchers are kind of sneaky sexy. You just think that's not going to be somebody you're going to find interesting, but we'll sneak right up on you, and you'll just be like, wow, this is a fascinating dude, you know? So anyway, my grandparents showed me birds at their bird feeder. I'm probably 13, and it's like, oh, there's a white-breasted nuthatch. There's a downy woodpecker. And then got the Peterson field guide out and showed me in the book what they looked at a little more closely. You can see their map of where they tend to live, and you can learn a bunch more in the book about them. And anyway, so they eventually got me my own little field guide, my own Peterson bird book, which today is one of my most treasured items I own. And then binoculars eventually, and it doesn't have to be an expensive thing to do. Decent little pair of binoculars and a field guide, and anymore there's like really, really cool apps you can get for free. You know, and we also have the benefit of traveling. Most summers, same grandparents would take our extended family on a fun trip. So, you know, Hilton Head, South Carolina was a common place to go. We'd hit Florida, Minnesota, Colorado. The year the Mall of America opened in the Twin Cities, we divided and conquered. So the ladies in the family got to go to the Mall of America shopping expedition. The guys, what do you think's comparable trip to go to the Mall of America for the guys?
Well, you're in Minnesota. Do you go fishing?
It's a good guess. A little farther afield, though.
Farther afield. Okay. You didn't go to the Mall of America. The women went to the mall. You went elsewhere.
No.
Or did
we went elsewhere. We went to a completely different state. We went to Alaska.
Oh, okay.
And my mom was like, I kind of think I'd rather go to Alaska. That seems like a better trip, you know, which we're all sitting here like, obviously, yes. So yeah, went to Alaska, went to the Kenai Peninsula. And so I was probably, I think 15. I don't know if you guys even know what Babe Ruth is, but Babe Ruth was, so you go from Little League in baseball to Babe Ruth as 13, 14 to 15-year-old. And like, so pre-high school, kind of middle school. And I guess as a 15-year-old, you could be a freshman. But so I was an All-Stars in Babe Ruth, and the day, not long after All-Star season ended, went to Alaska. And so flew in, and it was basically never dark because that was like July, I think, or early August. And anyway, so being able to travel around the country and see things in my bird book that I never thought I'd see in Iowa really helped fuel that early on. So as you get into bird watching, you know, seeing new birds is a big deal, right? And you add to your life list, it's called. And in that bird book, there's a checklist, so you can just mark each one. And now you have eBird on your phone. eBird is a thing that it's huge. It's huge. And this is all like talking Latin to you guys. I get it. But in the birding world, eBird is like the standard thing you do. You make checklists. You can submit checklists. So that it's a brilliant technique of tricking people into keeping their own lists that way. But then the data all goes to Cornell University, so it helps them track bird populations as well. So, yeah, eBird is fun.
You check the whole list.
What's that?
Do they have a checklist for you? Like how deep?
Is there
anything?
You just pull up, you start it, and there's the list of every species that could possibly be here. And then you are adding like how many of each individual.
How many you got?
How many are on my life list? It's not up to date right now, but it's got to be close to 600. So.
How many are there?
In the whole world?
In Iowa. In
Iowa, a little over 300. In the world, around 10,000. So that number continually fluctuates the more we learn about genetics, right? So splitting certain species that look kind of similar, they're learning and splitting them apart, or splitting and lumping is a thing you happens with species. It's continually changing the more we learn about genetics. So anyway, that's, my life list is probably in the 600 range. I'm not sure right now.
You checked everything off of Iowa? If it's in Iowa, you've seen it?
Just about. There's probably one or two things here. It would have to be pretty rare for me to see something new in Iowa. Yeah, a rare visitor.
That's crazy.
That yeah,
that's wild.
It's fun.
I mean, that's fun.
So I keep a yard list. Keep a Greene County list. There was 2 or 3 years in a row where I did what's called a big year, and so you have the entire year, and you can do whatever geographic area you want. So I wanted to learn more about Greene County, force myself to get out and explore what's right here in our county. So did a Greene County big year, and I can't even remember. Maybe I had 216 species, I think, in 1 year in Greene County.
Nuts.
So
yeah,
it's kind of fun. We have, despite being an agricultural, rural county, and we have habitat here and there, and it just shows how important it is to preserve what we have there.
You bet. Mm-hmm. You bet. So Alaska's like the epitome of nature.
It is for sure a wild frontier. Yeah. And so, yeah, you can go see just some amazing scenes with the fun poster wildlife, the grizzlies and orcas and moose and all the stuff. All that is there to be seen, and mountains and ocean and Mount McKinley, and very, very fun. Highly recommend that as an item on your bucket list.
So what is that? What's the thing that pulls you out of bed in the morning? If you want to get
sore
really
back,
deep.
a sore back,
back pulls you out of.
That's why I go see you every once in a while. No,
because anybody can talk to you and can see that's a passionate guy. Like Matt he's got some thoughts and some feelings and some passions that live and guide him.
Yeah, I kind of was thinking about that before seeing you today, and you don't see that from, I don't feel like I get that from everybody. I know I'm kind of an excitable guy, when I feel passionately about something, it, whether it's, promoting Jefferson or whether it's just talking about a fun event we have going. I try to be excitable. And I think back to teachers I had and who I learned the most from, and you could tell who was there and was passionate about, I'm sure Josh's students learn a lot about history because he's very into it and passionate about that. And, I could tell teachers that were, I'm kind of more into coaching football here, and I'll do this trigonometry with you because I need to, but, stuff like that. So even in college too, you could tell when people were excitable, that's infectious. And I don't know at what point in my life where I felt that, and felt empowered to do that, because it's certainly putting yourself out there to do that too, It's something, and I know I'm probably a little much for some people, not everybody takes my energy well, but that's just who I am.
80-20 rule, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's fine. I again, accept that I'm not for everybody all the time. That's just how life is. And you're not going to, kind of filter yourself always for the 20%. So I don't know at some point in my life, whether that was, through parents or in my upbringing and, building confidence in myself to do that, because I certainly don't feel like an overly confident person, and we all have our, our own self-conscious issues and all that. But somehow I was empowered to be an excitable guy. And I don't know, I fell in love with nature and birding, and spent more like 20 years as a non-traditional educator, as a naturalist, and educating the public about conservation and preserving our natural resources and on and on. And so that was a very fun, passionate job that I probably overdid it, and learned a good lesson about work-life balance, and still working on that. Turns out my new job is also tough to do that, but when you're passionate about it, it sure is fun to go to work. I'm grateful that I've had 2 careers now that I feel very passionate about the content of what I do, and I know that everybody can't do that. I'm just very grateful that I get to do that. So I think, to answer your original question on it, is just knowing that there's a lot of fun things to do, and I feel good about the content of what I'm doing. and promoting Jefferson and helping Jefferson grow. And it's a really great place to raise a family. Like all of us here are raising families here. And it's also a great place to retire. I think those are kind of our two big demographics we look at is, a Jefferson Matters director and as a city council person, like those are a lot of things I keep in mind, that we want to attract young families here and probably retired folks. Young singles is a tough sell in a small town. And I grew up in Fairfield, which is twice the size of here. And my dad was a pharmacist, and he was talking about it was really hard keeping employees. The young kids out of college, just hard to meet young people, young singles also. So go out, sow your seeds, come back and raise your kids here. And it's a heck of a place to raise a family. Really safe. There's plenty of churches. There's plenty of recreational things. There's plenty of great neighbors. And we're going to just try to keep making it even more attractive.
Is there any community that you are willing to admit mild envy about? I don't know. Oh man, if only we had that sort of a thing.
I think the benefit of being able to go to different work-related conferences and trainings and workshops and type of stuff, I've been able to see a few that I know. You kind of bring a little bit of that back, right?
Of other communities?
Yeah, of other communities. So Pella, for example. We were in Pella last year, and so something that is now in downtown Jefferson is something I picked up from Pella, and that is the new hanging baskets that we have. We just the city bought those last year. They're called eco planters, and their parks department really, or streets department, whichever one it was, really raved about these baskets, and they have to water them a lot less. They hold water longer, and on and on. So the city invested in that, and now we're so that's just one of those things, a little tidbits you kind of pick up on. But man, also in Pella, their downtown living, their upper story living is, Pella's a 1% situation. They've got a lot of exceptions that make them not realistic to hold yourself to. But again, you can learn from them. You can take elements of that and scale it to your community size. And boy, we'd love to see some of our downtown living quarters, maybe eventually above the New Journey Financial Building in the future of Jefferson. We'll see a neat fancy living place up above there, because that's got great potential. But anyway, we'll see what happens on the downtown living scene. That's kind of our next big chapter. I think we've done some of that in recent years. Spencer is another place we've been that's got a lot of neat stuff in Spencer. They're a Main Street community also. A lot of, again, neat shops. They have a really nice men's clothing store, which I would love to have here. I know you and I would keep them in business ourselves. I know some of our friends and other business owners downtown would love to have some men's clothing options besides the aforementioned bomb cars.
Carhartt,
Yep. All great stuff, but sometimes we need a little extra variety, but to be able to shop as local as possible. So anyway, those are Spencer and Pella come to mind. Charles City is another great community, has a lot of really neat stuff going. It really is, I think, too, a reminder that, great couples or friends weekend away to some of these places in Iowa there's a lot of great fun to be had. It doesn't have to be like, we're going on vacation this summer. Well, let's hit up, Arkansas, or let's hit up North Carolina. And there's a lot of really cool stuff right here in Iowa to be seen, and a lot more culture than I think a lot of people realize too. Decorah and that area is obviously a really great area to go visit. And especially if you want to paddle or anything, it's beautiful there as well. So a lot of really cool stuff right within our borders.
Interesting. Maybe Iowa's making a comeback.
We think so.
Yeah,
we think so. We're part of it is just, making people aware. And I think that's a lot of it's funny how what we've, in just my 2 years working for Jefferson Matters at the Welcome Center, we hear visitors coming in like, gosh, I'm really surprised by Jefferson. I didn't know that this was here. This was what Jefferson would be, or there'd be so much to do here. And so we have big plans of continuing to get that word out to folks within an hour of here, especially. And we know that Travel Iowa says if for every 4 hours worth of things you have to do in your community, people will travel an hour away. We know we have more than 4 hours of stuff. And we do see people traveling an hour away or more sometimes. And sometimes it's Roadside America stopping for people. We had somebody coming from Ontario, Canada on their way to Oklahoma last summer. And they made a point they wanted to they veered off to come see the bell tower, for example. So it's how do we just get that word out to people? And it's like almost everything. It's all about marketing, right? All about marketing and selling yourself. And we've got some steps in place where we think we're going to really up that game a lot coming up here this next year or two.
Well, not only is Iowa no longer the armpit of America, but Jefferson is not a hole in the wall town by any means. No.
It looks very cared about. I think that's one of the, sometimes people are like, why invest? I know it's been 12 years ago or something. The big streetscape project happened downtown with some of the new sidewalks and, bricks and the pillars and the lights and the baskets and all that stuff. So some people, I think that probably looks like a little bit of frivolous spending, but those are the impression you give is very important. It kind of like we talked about earlier was that's your living room. And so making it feel like it's welcome and clean and fresh and just cared about goes a long ways towards people wanting to stay there versus just kind of, maybe they don't even stop their car based on what they see. Like, let's keep going. Well, we'll keep going. You drive through certain neighborhoods and certain towns, like, let's not slow down here, because we want to be the opposite of that. And so some of these dominoes are falling to lead to bigger dominoes, to be able to get the career academy, new high school here. There's just things that happen that show that you are caring and community worth investing in, and that you've invested in yourself. And that helps bring people here and want to stay here and spend money here and hopefully set up shop here, whether that's a family or literally a shop, a business.
Do you, having fear is maybe too strong of a term, but is there any concern that as bigger and bigger dominoes get set up and get knocked down, that there will be a domino that is so big that there is no going back, or that will completely change the cityscape and the feel of Jefferson? And so to go there for a second, that's what a lot of people thought about these housing development.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that when you bring in, they're going to change how Jefferson feels.
Sure.
And then once that happens, there's no going back.
Sure.
Do you have concern?
So I think the general response is change is scary and hard, right? And I think the answer to that to folks who are very concerned about that is, what is not doing those things looking like right now? We're continuing to lose population. We have been losing population for basically 100 years. Population
in Greene County peaked in the year 1900.
Yes. We're like half of that now, right? Yep. And so being able to try new things and be strategic about where we're going to go with what, and being willing to adjust to new ideas, new people. And it's really easy if you grew up here. It's comfortable. Why shake it up? It's working for me. Those are very understandable outlooks. But to me, I think when you were describing this, to me, like a big domino would be scary to bring a box store into the outskirts of town. That's a downtown killer. That's a main street destroyer. And so people are like, oh, we'd love to have that here, which is, again, very understandable, and the convenience factor of it all. But our downtown for a community this size really is really, really important. And it's obviously not where every business exists, but it's a really important component of it for not just commerce, but for the culture of the community as well. So bringing in a big box store would be something that I would be scared of as a Main Street director. Providing housing opportunities that might bring a diversity of folks in, that doesn't scare me personally. I understand that, especially folks, if you've grown up here and maybe you just haven't been exposed to folks who speak differently than you or look differently than you, that could be intimidating for sure. But I think, one of the things we're proud of, at least what we're trying to do right now with GCDC, is putting ourselves in a place to be ready to welcome a diversity of folks. Certain communities that you see more diversity in around the state, they have had to react because they had some big employer that made it easy to have a diversity of folks come to town, and then they had to react to that. And we're trying to do things like make this foundation where we're ready and help the community be ready for that, help newcomers be ready for our community to be welcoming to them. And so a lot of the stuff we see just driven by fear. It comes down to education. I think trying to educate folks on the reality of things, provide tools and opportunities for folks to learn as much as they can.
Because if I may, the key point is that if nothing happens, if today all development ideas and a push, if all development push stopped today, if nothing happens, the population would decline. People would leave because there's no reason to stay. Right. People are always seeking opportunities. They're just going to go elsewhere because the opportunity isn't here.
Yes.
That's the idea.
Correct.
So how to pursue preservation of our community that's the attempt. Now, it's just like we all need to make money. How we make money is different, like teacher, chiropractor,
economic development person.
There you go.
We'll say that.
There's a good way to,
community development.
Indeed. Yes. So it's the key for us is we need to make money. How we do it is different. The key point is if nothing happens, population decline is going to continue. Right. It's not like, maybe it will, maybe it not. No, it is going to continue theoretically, right? Yep. Based on the trends from however long back you want to look.
Correct. You just see a general leaving from rural to urban.
Sure.
Or suburban.
Sure. And it's not like we can just go headhunt manufacturing because that's an idea that a lot of people have, that if there's more manufacturing happening here, that's jobs, that's people who need to buy groceries and shop and buy gas. But like those manufacturing opportunities are not just like being handed out.
Right. And you need... And the classic example is, friends at Scranton Manufacturing wanted to grow here, and they can't keep enough employees as is, or they haven't been able to, and they didn't see any way to sustain growth here to add the however many hundred jobs this factory expansion would have meant, and so they ended up doing that in Mississippi. So that's an opportunity that we miss because we don't have the people here. So there's a little chicken and egg that you kind of need to kind of both in step follow one another. It can't just be. I think we've brought Hy-Vee in. You've got the casino in. You've got some of these bigger employers, and both need employees. So you've got some job opportunities there, just as a couple of examples, and there's other examples certainly around the county. So it's providing jobs, but and even with telecommuting jobs, what's the community like? Why would people move here? I mean, jobs are certainly one of the top reasons a person moves. Childcare is another one. We've addressed that. Things to do with your family. I mean, those are all huge things, especially in the younger generations. We're seeing that. Like, I don't want to have to drive an hour to go do fun things. I don't want to have to, I want to have resources available, and so jobs are part of it, but certainly the rest of those things are too. And being able to invest in the city having a swimming pool and a golf course and a library and a rec center. I mean, those are all things that they're not money makers per se, but those are entities you have to have if you want to have a population in your community, right?
You want to know one of my crazy ideas?
Always.
That's good. The middle school is like a 10-part event fun center. Top floor paintball. Part of one floor, 18-hole mini golf. As crazy as you can. Happy Gilmore style. I want talking clowns and windmills and all this sort of stuff, right?
Yep.
You keep the gym, you preserve it as it is, and then you can do tournaments, basketball, volleyball, all this sort of stuff. Bring inflatables, and you have little weekend carnivals. You got a full kitchen in there. Let's start pumping out some coffee and some food and get a drive-through going on in there. Rent the whole thing for $25,000 for a weekend or a week if you want. You let corporations, you let these, let Apple come in, and you have this fun house thing, and maybe one part of it is like you get to stay there. It's like a hotel type of a thing,
sure.
So you've got some housing, and then it's just like this small town theme park thing,
fun.
That's my big, hairy, audacious plan.
It takes money. That's it.
Just takes money. That's all. You probably need $1 million or $3 million to
probably
or 30.
Probably a few.
To develop all of that. But yeah, the bones are there. That's half great. The battle is the bones.
Man, and it's just one of those tough things too. So you mentioned the gym, and it's you have local people such as our pal Chris Deal, who grew up in that gym and would love nothing more than to be able to make that work. And there's just like an impossibility fiscally for anybody to take that over, because it's going to take its own entire new HVAC, because it has to be separate from the building, and the school district doesn't want it, the city doesn't want it. It's going to have to be like a private person to come in and put that money into it. And so we haven't seen that person step up yet.
Who owns it?
Currently, the school still owns it.
Okay.
School still owns it.
And they pay property tax or
they presumably, yes.
Yeah.
But yes, that's correct. And so your idea won't necessarily be entirely dead in the water when they start working on them being apartments, because of the historic tax credit situation, it has to stay up there for, I believe it's 5 years and a day after the completion of the apartments. So that'll just be sitting there.
The gym part?
Correct. Yes. That's the requirement. It's a little bit of silly rules, we feel like sometimes.
It's not going anywhere.
You just play the game because there's a lot of money. Without the historic tax credits, that project won't happen. And so you have to kind of play the games when you're getting financial assistance.
You want to get me on a hot topic? Talk about the game, like the game that's being played. I need some head of insurance to come talk to me and tell me why when you go to the hospital that the insurance price is 3 times higher than the cash price. Yeah. And in this development project and the game that you have to play with taxes and the government and the laws and all this, like, I don't know a killer of progress and development more than that intervention.
Yeah.
And the game and it just gets me kind of bothered, because it seems like there are things that are there intentionally or not, I don't know, that just stimmy progress.
Yeah, there certainly is that feeling, and some of it feels like the more you learn, like, okay, there's some validity there, but sometimes it doesn't all add up. It doesn't, and you have no say over how the rules work. You just know you got to play them if you want your project to happen sometimes. So, on the matter of, say, like hospital and insurances and all that good stuff, you need to have my wife on your podcast. She'll be a great interview too. And she works in the Iowa Medicaid system and really can talk a lot about that and probably convince you that maybe single payer is the way to go.
Maybe what now is the way to go?
Maybe single payer is the way to go for the future.
Single payer.
Single payer.
Oh.
Insurance. So, yes. So, and there's lots of differing opinions on that, but it's like, let's do that or none at all, because like, I don't want to pay taxes for, everybody else to be getting health insurance too. And it's like, well, basically you kind of are already. I mean, if you know your premiums and stuff are, it is all kind of working the same way. It's a matter of how you want to look at it. So anyway, it's kind of it's just, compared to other countries too. And like, why is healthcare why is this such a financial option? Like, we have to choose if we're going to eat or go to the doctor. It's kind of messed up, right? So anyway, that's a whole nother big hairy ball.
Low back pain, number 3 reason that people go to the hospital is low back pain. And it's like the number 1 reason why people miss out on money from work. They miss work the most because of back pain.
Lower back pain. And when you, in your, from your perspective, is there a top 1 or 2 reasons that people end up having lower back pain? Is it abdominal strength? Is it overall fitness that ends up playing a part in lower back pain? What is the
couple of big ones? Yeah, a couple of big ones. Gravity. Does it ever shut off?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. And so neither do our muscles. Muscles never shut off. And so it's about being efficient against gravity, and it's about having the right amount of strength and flexibility and mobility. And all joints are a balance of mobility and stability. Mm-hmm. So a lot of low back pain happens when you've lost strength or mobility.
Sure.
So what's really bad is when you lose both, and that's essentially what happens as we age. Is you lose strength, and then things become unstable. That is a situation where you almost very hard to come back from that, because you can't move enough safely because things are unstable to build strength to create stability.
Sure.
So
it just really snowballs there on you.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. It can get out of control really fast. But
in your lower back is the place where it tends to be just noticed the most.
Yes, and because that's where your hip spine meets your hips,
Sure.
and that's your big postural muscles, and your neck muscles only handle your head, and your shoulder muscles only handle what's above it, but your low back and your hips handle all of it.
All of it.
Yeah,
Makes
it's
sense.
a huge pinch point there.
Yeah.
So
that's job security, it sounds like.
well, yeah.
I know your goal is just make everybody feel better. So there's that.
Yeah. My motto is giving everybody the best chance they have to be as healthy as possible.
That's great.
Just give you the chance, because if you start, you can't make any guarantees with health, and I have stopped trying to, because I've seen enough crazy things of like, wow, I never expected that to happen to you.
Yeah.
And you can look at cancer for like 1 second, and there's people who get cancer, and it's like, why did that happen to you?
Right.
And we don't have answers for a lot of that. Most cancers are not genetic. It's like 15 out of 16 are what they call in your mitochondrial DNA. So they're environmental.
Sure.
They're from the outside in that changed how your cells function. It's not from the inside out, where your body was destined to miscompute. But that's a hot topic.
Makes sense.
Yep. If we change our environment to support health gets nourished and cultured, just like development, just like anything, just like how things grow,
For sure. I think about that just on, as a human population, and I mean, like, something's gonna have to give here, because we're basically over consuming, right? And we kind of need to figure something out eventually.
Over consuming resources as a whole, or
Yes.
over consuming food, or
Yes, and yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and yes. I mean, we to take a 180 here, or I should say a 90 maybe. We we live right here in the heart of agriculture, and we study so hard how to maximize an acre, like the most we can get out of an acre, right? And how do we most efficiently use an acre? And I would argue that we should maybe reevaluate what that means, efficiency of an acre. And right now it's, how do we get the most bushels per acre, right? Well, why not look at what fuel for our bodies we get per acre? Because right now, a lot of that translates into feeding other animals, and then we eat that, or into fuel for our vehicles. But if you were to look at a more nutrient-dense acre that has health benefits, that isn't turned into some sort of sugar-based item, right? Or turned into, not to go on a vegetarian rant or anything like that, but that's a really inefficient use of an acre to go grow an animal. So to me, I think that's the future. If we were to have, say, like regional nutrient-rich acres, because it's right now we transport food from all over the country, right, or all over the world, I should say, to feed ourselves.
Yeah.
Throughout the year.
Yeah. Winter becomes an issue, but
Correct.
I think,
but you could do it. Absolutely.
yeah,
There's
I think, greenhouses and everything that we can.
There's ways to be done.
There's
but
ways. That's what I think for everyone.
That's a big, scary system that's hard to make very many changes to.
The bare bones of an idea that I wish one day, if I just had investment money, you'd have a plot of acres that 100 people or families, maybe 100 people, would pay someone to be the cultivator for that little community.
Yep.
And every family, it's like $1,000 a year you kick in. So $100,000 to a person, and that's how they live. Yes. And their job is to raise this food for us to eat, or have at least a supplemental amount of food to supplement what we buy from the store.
Yes.
That's
so essentially a CSA you're describing.
Is that what's a CSA?
Community supported agriculture. And so Tony Pill that lives here, used to live here, he used to basically do that. So you'd get a box, but it was just the growing season. It's just him and maybe an employee or two. So, but that's kind of what I was talking about, like a regional garden, and even a little bigger than what you're describing in my mind, so you don't have to transport stuff. I mean, obviously, the Valley in California produces a lot of fruits and vegetables, but you're transporting around the country. I think you could get by on on doing that a little bit more regionally. Some parts of the country would have a little harder time, but anyway, that's just, we're talking big picture stuff here, but it's kind of fun to think about. And these are the things that you look at and try and get together with people who are smarter than you. And I never want to be the smartest person in the room. You know, I don't feel like I am today for sure. So I'm glad to be here. I always want. I always want to feel like I'm not the smartest person in the room, and it's often the case. Usually the case.
That's the beauty of a podcast, is the knowledge sharing that gets to happen. And we've touched on topics that I know I'm not an expert in, or like the quest for maximizing the efficiency of an acre. And I know there's some cover crop guys out, and I don't know the beginnings of that, but I really want to try to understand it and and be a hub of knowledge and let other people understand it. And
you should definitely invite Bill Frederick on.
He's on the list.
He's great.
He's on the list.
So smart. He's way smarter than me, especially about that.
Well, and that's his profession now.
Correct.
So we need professionals to go all in, and then
that's really a great resource in Greene County and beyond. I mean, it's really neat to have those guys here.
Yeah.
That's some young business owners leading the way, a new direction in agriculture, and in cover crops. Cover crop acres have grown a ton in the last several years here. So the idea is spreading. A lot of it adjusting the farm bill to make it financially viable for folks. And it's amazing the power of what the guy down the road is doing, or what grandpa did, or dad did, versus what kind of the new science shows. So just, and that'll happen as we evolve, and new young farmers and things and new ideas willing to try stuff. And we are seeing that. So that's exciting.
It's one of those things like furniture making that's actually exciting once you see it done. That farming, I think, is actually like incredible once you start digging in.
For sure.
Jesse Green was on a little while back, and he had some very interesting things to say. But then Skylar Bardole is a close friend of ours, and he really has just been able to speak to me about some of those things that are deep, and I'm interested in all that.
Us city kids just don't really know for sure.
I call myself a townie. I say that a lot because that's how I feel sometimes. It's just, I didn't know. I get the ability to talk to a lot of people as a chiropractor, and I've learned a ton about farming. About farming, where I can carry a conversation.
Nice.
I know things now, but it's only the tip. Now I know what I don't know.
You feel like you've earned some Carhartts by now?
Honestly, I feel bad wearing Carhartts because there's
that's
two,
like so trendy right now, right? And
two types of people.
Correct. You're right.
People who wear it for the trend.
Two very different types of people.
People who wear it because they need it, because it's good gear. So if I'm wearing it and then I go in someplace and there's someone else who's like wearing it because they need it, I feel terrible. I just feel like
theirs have the holes worn through them, and like that's how it's supposed to be worn, right? Not this like mint condition stocking cap.
Such an imposter. Yeah, I just can't do it. But
man,
good on Carhartt for being able to sell their stuff to two opposite genres.
Kind of took over some of the North Face market there a little bit.
Yeah,
Patagonia.
We're about getting close to wrapping up. What are we, over an hour?
Yeah, we're at an hour 10.
Perfect. I was going to ask you maybe one or two things.
Sure.
Is there two parts here? A movie or a book, a movie that influenced you heavily and just like, wow, that idea and that concept, I loved it. That's question one. The question two is there like a futuristic movie idea that's like, yeah, we're not far from that. Like Blade Runner's maybe a little bit too out there but some AI and some robotic people and robots and AI taking over jobs, and like we're probably not. Do you think that's a realistic thought where AI replaces humans? There's no way. We're humans. We're the only thing capable of a soul, deep thinking mind.
I would never say there's no way, I guess. I'm not really into sci-fi guy, so I don't have a lot of great oh boy.
Maybe the first part.
I was, man, when I say my favorite movie, I usually will say any James Bond movie.
Really?
I just think for whatever reason, that genre of movie is always a bit interesting, and I'm always excited when the next James Bond movie is coming out. I don't know that I have any overly. I'll think of something after we're done here next week, so that'll be unfortunate. But I don't have a great movie that really stands out to me as inspirational. I think two books that come to mind and I'm honestly not a huge reader. I just like physically have a hard time reading. Not that I'm illiterate, but I really struggle with sitting down. Some people just love it for a recreational activity. That's not me. I'd rather be outside, I think, and just I'm a learner by observation.
Sure.
And I always wished I was more of a reader. And maybe that will come over time. But there's a book called Last Child in the Woods, and the subtitle is Saving Our Children from Nature Deficit Disorder.
Oh man, this is a nonfiction book. This
Correct.
is a
okay. Richard Louv is the author, and it was a big push in conservation education when it came out. Gosh, close to 20 years ago now, and so it really talks about the value, and it's really not just about kids; it's about all of us. The value of spending time outdoors, being connected with the outdoors, and just being aware. And that's what I think I love about bird watching. Like if you want to never be bored again, get into birding, but it's the power of observation and being aware of what's around you. And then it's like, oh, there's a Baltimore Oriole. Oh, why is it? Oh, look at its nest. It's nesting in that. Why is it nesting in that silver maple? And what else uses that? And why? And it's just this like boom. And like, oh, there's a tree frog on that tree also. And like, there's tons of things. It's just like a gateway, and they're everywhere you go. So that book is great. I would highly recommend it if you have kids, but just, it cites tons and tons of studies. So people who have offices that have a window to look out over a parking lot versus a park, and their productivity and overall happiness. And
yeah,
so, we are part of nature. We're at the root of it all, whether what your beliefs are or whatever. I mean, we are a species. We come from nature. We are part of nature. And that's, nature is all about balancing itself. And when we're not in the way to interfere that balance, nature is always balancing. It's all about that harmony, which I also look at with community development, like where can we find equality as much as anything? Maybe we won't need as much of a police budget if we can figure out a way to have people not be in poverty, for example. I could go on and on about that, but it's kind of a lot of our awesome inventions have come from nature, studying nature. And so I think that as a system, as a species ourselves, we can reflect and learn a lot from natural systems as well, and how much diversity is a key, and that you can mean that in a lot of different ways. So that book is really great. And then my grandfather sent all of us grandkids a copy with a handwritten letter of How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Dale Carnegie.
It's the classic, right? I mean,
1920s.
Early 1900s. And that's one of the few books I read. I've read it a couple times. And this, that value of really, to me, in summary, it's value, like making other people feel appreciated and valued, and the different ways to do that. And then you obviously do that as, in your office when you're engaging with people and learning about farming and things, and whatever it may be. But really, really making people feel seen and heard. We all love our name. We all love hearing our own name and being able to talk about us. And so, this is very fun to get to talk about myself here with you. And so that is just like very validating, and we all want to be validated. And it's a really powerful tool to be able to do with folks. And it's those people skills, it comes back to, so he knew that a long time ago. And so those are a couple of books that I really have enjoyed and felt a lot out of. I didn't expect to get to talk about books too much today, so that's fun. And I love watching movies more than reading books. It's 100 to 1 on watch versus read for me, but that's awesome.
Well, I appreciate our differences, and you're a guy that I could never do. I'm never going to be into nature like you necessarily.
Most people aren't.
Most people aren't. And everyone has that thing that they're into. And I've gotten enough experience with you to believe that we need you to be you. We don't need you to change necessarily. And we need the person that's exact opposite of you to be them as well.
Absolutely.
Like, that's what harmony and balance is. If we're all clones and copies of each other, that's
totally agree.
Not balance. That's right. Harmony in a way. So
that's a great point. Thanks for saying that.
Thanks for appreciating that.
No, I am a big feelers guy, and I really connect with people who also put their feelings out there and their emotions out there and express themselves, and I really connect with those people. I can connect with lots of people, but the people that I feel closest to, it's, I put myself out there, and I can feel that they appreciate that, and I feel validated from them, and it's a really connecting part of being a human is to to take that risk and be vulnerable and feel accepted by that, and not like you're extra and you're too much and you're, and those people that really, do the same, and you really connect those feelers out there. Those connections are intense, and that's like to me, that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
for sure. It transcends what's on the surface. It transcends.
Yes. Yeah. We're all seeking those relationships, those connections, and that's at the core of it all. We want to feel belonging. That's one of the core things, is to feel like a sense of belonging. That really is what it comes down to.
Yeah, I agree. Indeed, that's part of us.
Yeah, and I take that into my job even, and people that live here. Like, what can we do to help you feel you're a part of this community? Strength. One of our core goals is in our organization is strengthening sense of community, and so that is a huge thing to make people feel at home.
Yeah, and less dodgy than it sounds. Because again, my younger self would have been like,
just sounds hokey.
Leave me alone. Yeah. Just let me and my friends do what we want to do. Yeah. But I think I'm starting to get it. I think I'm starting to get it. And it does not mean everybody's buddy-buddy. Correct. It just means like there's this thriving thing that everyone can exist and thrive in. There's opportunity for you to plug into this community thing that exists almost unspoken between people, and have all your needs met, all the way down to belonging, financial belonging, food, exercise, interests, all that sort of stuff. So
yeah, we can all go do our own things, but push come to shove, we're going to be there for one another, and we know that. Whether you're great friends or it's just a neighbor you see every once in a while, if the time came, you'd know you'd have one another's back.
Yeah,
that's one of the great things about being in maybe everybody's up in your business sometimes in a small community, but you also know that they'd have your back in a time of need. So that's a really great sense of belonging here. Yeah. That's a really important part of a small community that, not to a young person, it's not a big flashy community to be a part of maybe, but as you grow up and you start to value those things, and that's like, wow, that's a huge plus on the plus side of things here. Yeah.
Well, as Josh hits that outro music, you want to flip the script? Anything you want to ask, put out there?
It's just great I'm happy to be here talking about all these things. We were all over the map today, and
that's how it goes.
Probably, there'll be more to talk about, so I'm happy to come back anytime.
Bet. I'm sure we'll do that. Rock on.
Thanks, buddy.
You bet. Till next time.
Cheers.
Cheers.